Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm back. I hope everything is going well with all of my viewers. Guess what? I've finally decided to join the Become a Living God forum. That's right, I'm signed up to the forum now and I've been engaging with the community a little bit. I've already encountered many interesting people, various discussions, and it's early days yet, but so far my experiences on there have been really good. The first discussion that I wanted to get going on there was of course Taoist weather magic, and I've dedicated an entire area of the forum to the practice, so please when you've got a moment, go and check that out and give it a read and get involved. This is my main objective now, to encourage more people to learn about Taoist weather magic and of course Zhuge. So, I have an extremely special subject that I wish to divulge here today. I'm going to be sharing information and esoteric knowledge on rain-making rituals and how one could harness the power of rain and water for spiritual reasons. These methods are very obscure in the Western world, but they are brilliantly effective for natural magic. If you listen closely and follow along, you are guaranteed to get success. Results will manifest and change will occur. The question isn't will it work or not, it's will you be ready to accept the experience? Because if it's performed correctly, your comfort zone and your perception of reality will totally shift. This is for the better. This indicates that you are growing and becoming more open and more ambitious in your magic. You're not just a magician anymore. You are a sorcerer of nature. And when it comes to history, you have to consider all of the ancient kingdoms and civilizations who depended upon the rain for survival. Crops needed to be grown, wars were often fought, and having the weather on your side was a blessing, and it still is. So let's begin. Ancient Taoists considered clouds, mist, and fog to be the vapor of the Tao, a layer of energy that flowed in between heaven and earth. There exists the powers of heaven, thunder, fire, mist, rain, and clouds, and the powers of earth, wind, water, mountains, and soil. In order to create change, there are three main methods and options. A magician may borrow the rain from a nearby location. Another approach would be to involve gods, spirits, or immortals. The magician would send petitions and ask them to assist in bringing forth rain. And lastly, if the magician was skilled and powerful enough, he or she would summon the rain by manifesting the elements and bringing them into creation, even if the skies and weathers were clear and calm. This is very close to what I do. If you are new to Taoist weather magic and you are taking your first steps, I would personally recommend borrowing rain from another location that is fairly close to you. It's much easier to do it this way as opposed to creating something because you're working with a force that already exists. Just be careful and considerate of where you borrow that energy from. You must remember, what you borrow must always be returned. I've heard horror stories of novice magicians who were new to the art and they learned how to take rain clouds from one area, but they didn't have the knowledge or the skills of how to return them. You should always think about the consequences of whatever force you are trying to change or manifest. It's not like most forms of magic which only affect you. Weather magic affects large-scale areas. Please be considerate of the bigger picture and what it will do to the environment. Water in Taoism is considered to be the blood vessels of the earth. It flows through the ground, giving life to everything, and it can manifest in either a yin or a yang form. When it forms as yin, it appears dark and murky. When it forms as yang, it appears white and clear. This is due to what is known as the impartial nature of water. It is both powerful and gentle at the same time. Water is also humble. Its humility is appreciated by Taoists because unlike people, water will always travel to the lowest area. Whilst people seek to achieve more fame and more wealth, water is grounded and down to earth. It is also benevolent in nature, able to cleanse evils and wash away old energy. Even in other traditions, you'll often have priests who use holy water, for example, just to remove negative energy and spirits. Water has a fairness to it as well. It does not discriminate where it flows, and when it is leveled, it settles. Lastly, water has deep integrity. If one were to quantify it, it would be impossible to make it level off. These are known as the virtues of water. Water's planet is Mercury, and the deeper the water, the more chi it contains. So how does one actually summon rain? Traditionally speaking, there shouldn't be only one person or practitioner doing the spell on their own. It's really recommended that you need 7 helpers. 2 represent the female and male energies of the dragon, whilst the other 5 will represent the 5 thunder spirits. Now I must say, I have never been in the position where I could get 7 other people, all spiritually trained, all in one place and at one time to perform weather magic with me. It's just not going to happen. I've always been a solitary practitioner since day one. I'm very open about working with others, but the point is, I've always been able to accomplish everything that I've wanted to without anyone else's involvement. So that's not going to change anytime soon. If you intensely focus on training like I do, you won't have to worry about that too much. Before you can begin the ceremony itself, you'll need to take 3 days out in order to purify your body, which means to abstain from certain kinds of meat, wine, sex, absolutely no drugs, and focus on keeping your intent sincere and authentic. You can't just sit there and think, I'm going to do this to have fun, or I'm going to do this to pass the time. You have to maintain some reverence for the practice. During the 3-day period, you should spend time creating the talismans. These may range from the yellow slips of paper, known as fu, to the magical weatherstones and crystals. Some magicians spend the time in deep meditation, communicating with their spirit guides, whilst others will focus on the petitions that should be sent to the weather gods. When asking the weather gods for help, approach them with the utmost respect. You do not command them to help you. You ask them to help you. You basically submit a request, and if they agree to assist you, then it is proper to perform a ritual of thanks. Organs also have a powerful connection with the weather. The kidneys are associated with rain, and the gallbladder associated with clouds. During the 3 days of purification, when I want to call rain, I always drink a lot of natural spring water, and I pay very close attention to what I eat and where my food comes from. So this is the part where I'll probably hear you groan. You'll need to construct an outdoor altar. May I recommend the Altar of the 7 Stars? This is the one I use. I said you'll probably groan at that because it actually involves some real work. You can't expect to make massive changes to nature and to the world by working from your bedroom dressing table. The altar itself should face towards the south, the direction which is of course associated with the red vermilion bird. And in the 4 corners of the altar, you should burn some sandalwood incense. This will purify the altar for proper ritual work, and it will remove any unwanted spirits and stop others from trespassing. Some of the tools you will need on the altar will consist of weatherstones, such as green jade and selenite, a chunk of marble. You'll need the shell of a tortoise, think of the black tortoise of the north, who is very strongly connected to the water element. You'll also need a bowl of chicken's blood. This is used to write and create the fu, the paper talismans, and of course the paper itself, which should be yellow. I would also personally recommend that in order for you to direct your energy to a very specific point, let's say you're trying to pull a cloud out of the sky, you should use a ceremonial sword, and it can be either made of wood or steel. By using the sword, you can point it to the sky and draw out the pattern of the Northern Dipper. It's very important. Now, if you see my videos of me practicing, you would have seen my scrolls and banners hanging up around the altar. It's common to see these scrolls placed around, and on them you would usually see drawings or paintings of weather gods or the names of weather gods. So in this case, you're going to need the god of rain, and out of personal preference, there are 3 that I know very well. I would advise that you work with Yu Shi, the rain master. He brings forth rain by dipping his sword into a pot. Another rain god I know very well is Ying Long, a 1,000-year-old winged dragon who is able to create clouds with his breath. And if you want to add thunder into the mix to cause a greater effect, work with Lai Gong, the Lord of Thunder. He has a striking appearance, known to carry a mallet and a drum, then later a hammer and a mace that can create thunder. Again, be very respectful towards these beings. I'm going to make a detailed video on the Chinese weather gods in the future, so you can learn more about them. In order to harness the power of the 5 thunder spirits, a good-sized wooden bucket is needed. It should be placed on the altar, and within it there should be 5 branches. And what these 5 branches do is they attract the water energy from the 5 directions into the center of the bucket, the 5th direction of course being the center. This really is an important tool if you want to call heavy rain, and it's the one that I use very often for this kind of working. What you may also want, just to make things a little easier, you might want a map of an area where you are calling the rain. This will help when it comes to the vivid visualization, to imagine in detail where you'd want the rain clouds to form. So look at the map and kind of think about what you want. And if you want further success, black Taoist robes are needed, as the subcolor black helps manifest dark, stormy clouds. And on your head, you can wear a lotus crown headdress like the one that I have. And be sure that it allows your hair to flow in the wind. So on the evening before the ritual, you should take a ritual bath to cleanse your body. This starts at 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. And when it is time to perform the weather magic, you shouldn't wear shoes. That's why if you get the chance to watch any Taoist weather priest performing, they are always barefooted. To begin the working, you must burn a paper talisman created for purification. Burn it and gather its ashes into a cup of water. Then sip the water, don't drink it. Instead, spit it out into a fine mist into the 5 directions. You are to do all of this while standing and moving around the altar. I had a lot of viewers messaging me when they first saw my video on summoning wind. They were wondering what was I doing spraying water around. It's a lot harder than it looks actually. So after you have sprayed the water, you should be quite deep into the flow state, otherwise known as the trance state to some of you. And you'll know when this is happening because, well, at least with me, I feel super in tune with the world around me. I become very aware of the weather. Without even trying, I start to feel the weather. You know how people say, I can sense or I can smell that a storm is coming? Well, imagine that feeling, but much more intense, much more magnified. That's what it's like to me. Now, there are 6 laws for Taoist weather magic, all of which are very important. And if you want to excel as a Taoist magician, you should master all of them. But there is one law that is especially helpful in this case. It is known as the law of personification. This is going to differ from person to person, but it's based around personifying the weather and its elements. For example, giving rain a personality and a persona. When you use this law, you consider the rain, wind, storm, snow, hail, etc. to be living beings. They are just as alive as you are. This makes the magic and performing it easier because you assign certain traits to the element that you are working with to make it more relatable to your own experience. So after you have entered into flow, you'll begin to say the divine incantations. Now these words of power often rhyme like short poems. And it's not just the words themselves, but also the delivery of them, the tone of voice. And as I say the incantations, I allow my body to flow with my words. So everything is in a kind of perfect sync. And some of you may know this as vibrating the names. I'm going to give you an example of an incantation used to bring rain down. Rains of time bring forth new birth. Let the dragon gods reign upon this earth. Now sometimes incantations are chanted. This usually involves gods that have been petitioned. I know some people may be asking, would it make a difference if you said the incantations in Chinese? Well, from my experience, it does not seem to matter that much. I've been saying them all in English for years, and I've always gotten good results. So I would say don't worry too much about that. After the incantations have been said out loud, I will begin to perform what is known as star stepping, otherwise known as pacing the 7 stars. Now, I've already made a complete video on this practice, but to quickly cover it again, Taoist magicians would pace in a zigzag-like fashion in order to open the gate of heaven and wander the bridge between the earthly and the spiritual. Each of the 7 stars corresponds to one of the 7 planets, and ancient Taoists believe the movements of the stars had a profound effect on the wind and the rain. After the steps have been completed, there are certain hand gestures known as hand seals that need to be performed. Some are related to the 8 trigrams of the Bagua. The seal you will need in this case, with the one I use to bring clouds, is Dua. It helps with mist, All of these should be accompanied by the proper incantations. And by using the trigram hand seals, they connect your body to whatever element you wish to work with. And after this, you will need to draw out the talisman to bring the rain down, and draw it from the red chicken's blood onto the yellow paper we spoke about earlier, and then burn the talisman into a cup of water. Now this is where I do things a little differently. Traditionally, what would happen here is the priest would have 7 cups for the other helpers, and each of them would drink the consecrated water, and this would allow the weather gods to enter the bodies and the spirits of the helpers. But since I'm solitary, I drink the water, and the gods become one with me. Then once they are activated, this is when the rain spirits really begin to help me, and I go into deep visualization, painting a mental picture of all the details of the clouds, the texture of the sky, the temperature, what direction the rainfall is coming from, how the rain would sound as it falls on the leaves, what it would sound like, what it would feel like to fall on the skin, etc. And when I say imagine these things in your mind, I mean vividly imagine them as much as you can. And what you'll find is you'll go so deep into it, it becomes a kind of meditation. Remember what I said in previous videos about the sound of water. The quieter and calmer the water's sound, the more beneficial chi it will contain, and the more auspicious it will be. Because Taoist weather magic is very physical, you're pacing, you're moving around, you're performing the lengthy sword routine, as you practice you're going to get rather hot, especially when you wear the long thick robes. It'll make you sweat. But that's actually what you would want to happen. Drops of sweat represent raindrops, so getting warmer and sweating will encourage rain to fall. So don't instantly wipe it away. I know I do this sometimes without thinking because we're programmed to do it, but I have noticed a decent amount of difference. In winter, when it's very difficult to sweat, the weather rituals seem to take longer, but in summer, when it's very warm and you sweat easily, the workings seem to be much shorter. That's just my personal experience with it. If you've been following me on my Facebook page at Lord Josh Allen, you would have seen my posts and pictures on using musical instruments for weather magic. There are 4 main instruments that I use for calling forth rain and wind: a drum, a bell, a buglehorn, and sometimes a smaller horn. Now there isn't really anything complicated about the way that I play my instruments. I'm not a musician at all. But for the drum, I'll just work on keeping a steady beat. And as I progress throughout the ritual, I play the instruments at a more intense rate. So in the beginning, I'll start off slow and calm, and I'll get more lively as the working continues, as the storm builds up, and this encourages change to occur within the weather. I'll always have a bronze statue of my protective guardian, spirit guide Zhuge placed on the altar just to oversee things and watch over me as I practice. I would advise that you use any spirit you feel connected to, just to make you feel a bit more comfortable as you do your ritual. And at the end of the ceremony, give thanks to the gods and spirits that have worked with you, and enjoy the result. So thanks for watching, everybody. Take care. I'll be back soon.